When I signed up to do this, it's because give me a chance to talk, and so it's interesting. I'm going to either see my words or you. So I apologize, but I'm going to go with the words. It's because give me a chance to talk about Jesus, and I will. He is absolutely the solid rock on which I stand. We're going to sing that later. It goes all the way back to when I was a kid, and every summer I won the prize for bringing the most kids to DVBS. Every summer. I simply love Jesus. But I also realized this morning there was another reason I did this. My sweet husband moved to Portland and goes to my church where he, every Sunday, is Lisa's husband. Down here, I get to be David's wife. And so that's part of the reason I did it as well. I simply love Jesus, and being in relationship with him, his life plan for me is always the best. It's why we will sing Pass It On. I'll sing Pass It On any chance I get. But I love the part that says, I wish for you, my friend, this happiness that I found. You can depend on him. It matters not where you are bound. I'll shout it from the mountaintops. I want my world to know the Lord of love has come to me. It's about the love. However, this is supposed to be about my faith journey. And Pat said I have 15 minutes. Seriously? So I'm going to do the first 35 years in 3 sentences or less. I grew up in a family that, despite its dysfunction, and aren't we all dysfunctional, loves each other in a very serious way. At the very center of that is my maternal grandmother, Mimi. She's in heaven now. She lived a life of quiet faith and service. She expected nothing and appreciated everything. She sat in the back row at People's Methodist Church in South Portland in case she got a tickle in her throat. At least that's what she said. The truth was, if it went to 12:01, she was out the back door. She showed Jesus' love to all of us in a very practical way on a daily basis. I have always been in church, but it wasn't until I was 35 that I knew the difference between religion and relationship. A relationship with my Creator. At 35, I got divorced. I had been married to an abusive alcoholic, and I decided for my children to leave that marriage. My children were 5 and 7, and when I left the marriage, he immediately went downhill, actually became homeless, went well into his addiction, so I raised 2 kids on my own, spiritually, financially, emotionally. And it's the first time I couldn't see hope or a future. Jeremiah, my favorite verse, we can talk about that too. And so along came Phil Strout. And Phil Strout preached a sermon on July 3rd, 1999, and we've all been there. When you're sure the sermon was written for you, Phil used to call Jesus, he would say, Jesus read your mail. Well, Jesus read my mail that Sunday. Phil said, how many of you don't think the man who hung the stars in the sky can manage your little tiny life? I raised my hand. Nobody asked me to raise my hand. Then Phil said, how many of you, when things don't go as you hoped or dreamed or planned, take the reins of control back from the creator of the universe? I raised my hand again. And then he looked at me and said, how's that working out for you? I immediately burst into tears and cried for about 2 days, but for the first time I released control of my life to the person who hung the stars in the sky. And I've never looked back. Out of that, and I believe that out of our greatest trials and challenges comes the way God uses us the most. And so out of that, so now we're going to do 15 years in about 3 sentences or less. I got given from God a ministry called GALS, Get a Life Sister. And it's a ministry to single moms. And I hated the term broken family. I didn't feel broken. My kids weren't broken. We had Jesus. And so I started this gals group where we all got together and we built community and we supported each other and we loved each other. And gals is actually still in place. David can tell you they come and go from my house on a regular basis. My favorite story, and it's off topic, but when David and I were first dating, he was over on a Sunday and we were watching the Patriots and we were sitting in the living room and someone came in. People knock now, they didn't used to knock, they've learned to knock, but someone came in the back door and said, I'm having a rough day, I want to go take a nap, and went up to the spare room. 20 minutes went by, someone else came in and said, I'm just going to go downstairs and read, and went downstairs and read. An hour or so went by, a third person came in and laid on the floor and started crying. David said, welcome to women's ministry. I said, welcome to women's ministry. So Gals is still going strong. Some of them have gotten married. They come and go. And there's a big picture at my wedding with all the gals together. But I do believe out of ashes, God creates beauty, and he did with this gals group. So fast forward, I've raised my kids. They're doing as well as kids do these days, sometimes better than others. They're in their 20s, and I'm 50. And somehow I think at 50, that's the magic number. It's the new chapter. I'm going to start a new life. I've raised my kids. I've worked my jobs, and 50 is the threshold. And it was true, just not the way I thought. At 50, I got recruited and started a new job at a local healthcare organization. I had been there a month, and I had a lump in my throat that I couldn't swallow beyond. I thought it was allergies. I kept trying to get rid of my allergies. So I'd been at this brand new job that I had been recruited in, and I went to a hospital to find out what the lump was, because I went on a Sunday. I didn't want to miss work. I was brand new. Director of Human Resources, important job, or so we thought. And they said I had an abscess infection and kept saying, doesn't it hurt? And I was like, no, I'm great. And they gave me steroids and antibiotics. 2 weeks went by, still couldn't swallow. So I went to my primary care, who said, wow, the steroids and antibiotics they gave you must not be working. Let's try another round. 10 days later, I'm in church on a Sunday, and I knew something was wrong. I said to my pastor, I think I'm going to go to Mercy Hospital. And he said, do you want someone to go with you? At this point, this is how serious I'm taking it. I got to Mercy, and I said, we either need to do this quick, or you're going to need to get me in a room with a TV because the Patriots are on at 1. So they got me in a room with a TV. And then the doctor said, time to stop treating and time to start diagnosing. And they did. And eventually they called in an ear, nose, and throat specialist who said, we're going to do a biopsy. That was on a Sunday, and on Tuesday I showed up at his office with Bible in hand and said, this is what my Lord says, now you tell me what you have to say. And he said, you have cancer, throat cancer. Never was a smoker. And he said, do you want to know what stage cancer and what we think? And I said, nope. Jesus knows when I'm going to heaven, and that's plenty for me. So I started chemo and radiation and went, as some of the people in the room will know, 3 steps from the valley of the shadow of death. It was the worst physical experience I've ever been through, but I'm here to talk about it. And I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for it because I learned the power of community. I needed to be shoveled. I needed caretaking. I needed to be driven to chemotherapy. My brother, who was, and I shouldn't probably tell this, but my brother, who was a Portland firefighter, would send an ambulance over to give me IV fluids when I was dehydrated. My driveway got shoveled, my house got cleaned, I got taken care of in a way that I had never been taken care of in my life. And I'm grateful because I saw the power of community in action. So I got back on my feet eventually, and I got back to work. Yay, I was thrilled to be back to work. I wanted to Julie Chase, who's here, will tell you that I kept saying, I just want to be normal. And Julie kept saying, you are normal, it's just a new normal. So I got back to work, and I started dating this really interesting man. And we dated for 6 months. And I think I wasn't ready for this really interesting man. And the funny part of that story is that we would pull in the driveway, and I thought I would pull in the driveway and think, oh no, he's going to want to kiss me goodnight. And I would be calm and cool and collected and say, I'm going to go in, and I'd open the car door and exit very calmly into the night. That man has later told me that I didn't exit very calmly. He thought the door was coming off the hinges every time we pulled into the driveway. But eventually I said, I don't want to be any more than friends, and broke up with him with a really nice email. It was a really good email.
It was very nice.
And so then that was in August of 2015, and in October, I was at an Emmaus training. I was going to finally be an ALD for Emmaus. And I was at an Emmaus training, and I didn't feel good. And I said to my friend Julie, I don't feel good. And Julie said, none of us feel good. And I said, no, I really don't feel good. I don't know who suggested we go to the hospital, whether it was Julie or I, but we started driving to the hospital, and Julie will tell you that halfway there she thought I've made a mistake. We should have called a rescue. By the end of the day, I had what they called Takotsubo cardiomyopathy, or broken heart syndrome. A typical heart beats at 60 beats a minute, and mine was beating at 10. By the end of the day, I was on life support on a ventilator with a balloon keeping my heart going. And the thing I remember most, and Julie remembers much more about all this than I am, so she should probably be up here, but I remember saying to the doctor, am I going to die today? Because you can see terror on a doctor's face. And she said, we don't know. And I said, listen, there are a lot of people who don't know Jesus, and I have a job to do, so do everything you can to keep me here. And I meant it. And I believe, and Julie can tell you this part, I made them all pray before I let them touch me. I said, we're all going to bow our heads, and we're going to pray, and we're going to invite Jesus into the room. So I spent 8 days on life support. They took the balloon out after 4, I think, but I wasn't coming off the ventilator. They flew family in. They had a meeting and said it was very serious, and that everyone should be there. And on day 8, I go to a Wednesday night prayer group, and my gals all said, we've had enough. And they all got together, and they went on the 8th floor, underneath where I was on the 9th floor, and prayed and worshiped, and sang and prayed, and cried and prayed, and joined hands and prayed. And that day the ventilator came out. And so I'm grateful for Takotsubo cardiomyopathy, because I really saw the power of prayer for the first time. I believe that group of women and men in that room on the 8th floor, those prayers lifted to heaven are responsible for that ventilator coming out. I'm grateful for that. So then, I got to be an ALD again. I was at training, October a year later, back on my feet, not back at work. Long story, I didn't even add this, but ended up leaving my job because the doctor at Maine Med said, you can not go back there. It's going to break your heart. Time to do something else. In the meantime, I'm at another Emmaus training, and that same man I had dated a year previously said, I've missed you. And apparently in my nervousness, I said, I know. But 6 months later, I said, I do. But I said I do to a man who also, as I was going through the transition back to work, I had weakness in my right hand, and I dragged my foot. And we were attributing, my primary care and I, were attributing that to some nerve damage from all the radiation I had in my neck. But on April 29th, 2000, what year did we get married? 16? 17. So April 29th, 2016, I was diagnosed with Parkinson's. I'm grateful for that, because it's taught me joy in the moment. And it's taught me to be grateful for every moment. And it slowed me down in a way that I take care of myself and do things that I wouldn't have done before. And if God can save me from what I later learned was stage 4 throat cancer, because he said, do you want to know? And I said, no. Jesus knows when I'm coming to heaven, and that's plenty for me. But I found out by accident, and when I found out it was stage 4, the doctor said, we never expected you to be here. When I talked to Dr. Sawyer about the heart thing, he said, we never expected you to be here. So I'm not buying the Parkinson's, frankly. And I think 15 years from now, we'll all look back and go, that was good. I got to be out of work on disability and do full-time ministry, and Social Security pays for it. So I'm grateful for everything that I've been through because it teaches me joy in the moment. We have the chance to find gratitude in every circumstance because of Jesus. And when we do, we show a lost and weary world that it's different when you love Jesus. That you can walk through things, you can walk through trials, you can walk through adversity, and he is always there, and he is always by your side, and he will take care of you every step of the way. And we're living in a world that desperately needs to know that. Desperately needs to know the love of Jesus. And again, I want to close. I think I did it in 15 minutes, huh, Pat? I want to read Corinthians again because I think it sums it all up. What we're going through now is so small compared to what we have to look forward to. So I'm going to close by reading the verse in 2 Corinthians again. Because, as I said to David last night, I start reading the Bible and I'm like, oh, I love that. Isn't God smart? Look what he wrote. It's so good. It's all in there. And then I read the next part of 2 Corinthians. I could have read about 4 chapters to you. I'm like, did you read this, David? Look how good this. He's so smart. That Jesus man. We've been surrounded and buffered by troubles, but we're not demoralized. We're not sure what to do, but we know God knows what to do. We've been spiritually terrorized, but God hasn't left our side. We've been thrown down, but we haven't broken. What they did to Jesus, they do to us, trial and torture and murder. What Jesus did among them, he does in us. He lives. Our lives are at constant risk for Jesus' sake, which makes Jesus' life all the more evident in us. While we're going through the worst, you're getting in on the best. We're not keeping this quiet, not on your life. And trust me, I have a big mouth. I'm convinced that's why the enemy comes after me all the time, because he's trying to shut me up. Just like the psalmist who wrote, I believe it, so I said it. We say what we believe. And what we believe is that the one who raised up the Master Jesus will just as certainly raise us up with you alive. Every detail works to your advantage and to God's glory. More and more grace, more and more people, more and more praise. So we're not giving up. How could we? Even though on the outside it often looks like things are falling apart on us, on the inside God is making a new life. Not a day goes by without his unfolding grace. These hard times are but small potatoes compared to the coming good times, the lavish celebration prepared for us. There's far more here than meets the eye. The things we see now are here today and gone tomorrow. But the things we can't see last forever.